So my name is Jennifer Gillick, and I am the program director at APDA Northwest. I will try to speak clearly today. We'll see. Thank you for joining us for the next installment, actually the last of 2021, of our Take Control program. We are very excited to have you all here. See if I can move my PowerPoint on. Look at that. We are excited that we are concluding our Take Control series with one of our favorite speakers and fabulous physical therapist, Dr. Nate Coomer. He brings such a passion and enthusiasm for the treatment of folks with Parkinson's. And he's the founder of the Parkinson Fitness Project. We will welcome him to the screen in just a moment. And he's really going to talk about just combining your exercise with cognition, because we all know how important exercise is, but let's get our brain working with our exercise. So Nate's going to talk about that today. Just a few things about the program. It's going to be about an hour long. That will include questions and answers from you. So if you find the little function in Zoom that says Q&A, you can type your questions in there at any time. We are recording this program and it will be archived on our YouTube channel. All of our programs that we have done this year virtually, which is all of them, for the Take Control series, is up on our YouTube channel. And every time we post a video there, if you subscribe to us, you'll just get noticed. So you'll know when there's something new that might interest you. Today's program sponsors, I just want to thank Synovian Pharmaceutical Company for their financial support of APDA. They make programs like this possible, and they help fund the services that we provide. So thank you so much to Synovian for your support. The mission of APDA, we are all about helping everyone who is impacted with Parkinson's live life to the fullest. So we do that through kind of 5 key areas is kind of what we think about. We keep people moving through our exercise classes. We keep people connected through support groups, running them, and also working with local support groups. We keep people educated through programs just like this and other programs that we do. We provide financial support to people through our Patient Aid Scholarship Program. And we also fund critical cutting edge research. And our local chapter has been around for a long time, since 1984, serving these Northwest states, and now in this virtual world, serving everybody around the country and the world. So individual donations are absolutely critical for what we do. So I just want to thank those of you who donated when you registered for this program. Everything that we do is funded by individuals and sponsorships. So you really keep the trains running. We are just about at the end of our year. So if you are in a financial position to do so and want to donate to APDA, we would love your contributions and your involvement so we can continue to do what we do in serving the Parkinson's community. Okie doke, enough for me. Let's welcome Dr. Nate Coomer to the screen. He is like I said earlier, he is a fantastic physical therapist here in Seattle and is the founder of the Parkinson's Fitness Project and the Daily Dose, which is a really great online exercise program. Nate has done a number of programs with us, and we love to invite him back because he speaks with such enthusiasm and has such great knowledge. So Nate, thank you for being here so much. How are you today? You are muted today.
You always make me blush.
Yeah, well.
Kind words.
Yes, well, you are one of our favorite people to refer to. So thank you for just your willingness to do this. And I am going to disappear and let you take it away. And I'll be there in the background if you need anything. And we will do a Q&A and we'll go from there. So I'm turning over the mic to you. Thanks for being here, Nate. And thank you to everybody who is here watching.
And real quick, Jen, I should be able to share screen and everything pretty without any problems. If I do, I'll
I
crying.
believe you have all of those controls. And if not, I'm here to make sure you do.
I'll just be crying on screen and you'll know there's a problem.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. See you later.
Yep. Hello, everyone. I love these virtual webinars where I talk to myself, but I do see a lot of names that I know. So I feel you in this room. Phyllis, JJ. JJ does great stuff, and it's awesome to see you. Hopefully I can give you some knowledge you haven't already thought of, but I know you're doing good things. So it's nice to see your name. Bill, how you doing? I think Faith, I know Faith. There's a few others on here. Ruthie, hi Ruthie. Oh, I miss Ruthie. Ruthie, give us a call. We'll figure something out. It's great to see you. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and Sarah. I know Sarah. I think that's Sarah Odd, isn't it? Is that Sarah Odd? There's only one Sarah I know from France, so I'm assuming that's Sarah. She does our speech therapy on Daily Dose, and she's a speech therapist, and yeah, that is. So one of the best, probably the best speech therapist that I know out there. She's killing it. So good to see you. All right. I am going to talk to you guys today a little bit about cognitive training and exercise at the same time. So I'm going to pull up my screen. I have a very short slideshow that I'm gonna throw up right now. Hopefully it works. Jen, tell me if it doesn't. Let me see. I think I can just. Looks like I can share. Sorry for the craziness in the background. Won't be there long. And then we'll go to. And let's see if I can share. Shoot, no, I want to present. Sorry, cancel that. Okay.
We got it, Nate. You're good.
Thank you. That was what I was looking for. So what's the link? Cognition, training, and exercise. I spoke on this a few times before. It is probably the thing that most interests me when it comes to treating people with Parkinson's, and just, in general, the way the mind and the body work together, and the specific research that's been done concerning Parkinson's and falls and movement and how it relates to cognition. I think this is a relatively new area of research, although, there's been, people have been looking at it for 10, 15 years. I think there's a lot more that we are going to find out as we dive deeper, as research dives deeper into this relationship. So feel free as you go along to chat. Let us know if you have any questions. I'm sure Jen can jump in at any time if there's a question that's relevant. Let me know, and I can try to answer it. And we'll just go ahead. My hope is that as we go along, you guys will have really come away with this with some practical applications for how you can use these cognitive skills and drills in real life, and have an idea of how they correlate with how you move. I hope I can make that make sense, because it can be a little bit complicated. So my name is Nate Coomer. I'm a physical therapist from Seattle. Moved out here about 11 years ago. I went to Northwestern University in Chicago, graduated in 2006. I really have become very passionate about Parkinson's, because I feel like as a physical therapist, it's one of the areas that we have the greatest ability to be a key role in how this disease plays out over time as we work with people with the disease. It invigorates me and motivates me, and the people that I get to work with day in and day out motivate me and drive me to work harder for them, because we know physical therapy and exercise can be so helpful to slow the progression of this disease. I'm a certified neurological clinical specialist. That's through the American Physical Therapy Association. It just means I took a test that shows that I know a bit about neuro, and as well as Parkinson's disease. And 5 years ago, we started something called the Parkinson Fitness Project, which is, I'll talk a little bit at the end, but it's really comprised of me and some other therapists, a team now, and we work out of 2 different clinics in and around Seattle, as well as to provide physical therapy, exercise training, and in group classes, which are coming in the new year now. We're hoping to get back into them, as well as an online forum called Daily Dose PD, or an online platform, Daily Dose PD, which gives online training, videos, and exercise for anybody to use at any time. So that's really the project, is trying to give people access to exercise from wherever they are. This is a little bit of our team from Seattle. These are a few of the faces that make us who we are. Over on the left are my kids. And then to the right of that is my wife. She works alongside of me. She works and owns her own clinic for physical therapy that works with runners. Some of our group classes, some of the smiling faces of our therapists, and up in the top left, us kind of working out on Daily Dose. Franz, who is another big part of our workout team, is leading class on the upper right. So just a few faces to give a little bit of picture of who we are and what we do. Today's objectives. I have objectives. I hope I complete them. To learn the research behind exercise and cognitive training. Number 2, to understand how cognition affects balance and gait. Number 3, to understand the specific areas of cognition that are important to train for reduced risk of falls. And number 4, I think most importantly, to give you examples of how cognitive training can be intermixed with exercise. So I'm going to be moving around. I hope you guys move around a little bit with me as we go along. Hopefully I won't spend too long with anything else, and you guys will feel like you got a good demonstration so that you can take this information and apply it to real life. I think that's the most important thing from these webinars that people need to get. So why exercise? The simple answer is it promotes brain change. So when we're talking about, let me see if I can move I always hate when my screen jumps around. I feel like I'm looking down on it. There we go. So exercise promotes brain change in Parkinson's disease. Another word for that is neuroplasticity or neuroadaptation. Just big words that mean things happen when we exercise that are positive for the brain. And a few of those things are listed down below. We promote brain health and repair. We increase neuron size and speed of transmission so that circuitry moves faster, or that signals move faster through our circuitry in our brain. We increase corticomotor excitation. So the cortex and the motor cortex, and specifically the part of our brain that controls movement, shows increased excitation after we've exercised at a moderate intensity or higher. We also have increased blood flow. When we talk about getting nutrients into our brain to help with healing and with function, we need increased blood flow. We have vasodilation when we exercise. That's true for anybody, Parkinson's or not. But with Parkinson's, it helps to bring those nutrients that we need up to our brain, as well as oxygen, and helps also with inflammation. So huge part to play with blood flow when it comes to exercise and Parkinson's disease and how we manage this disease. We actually, one of the cooler things that happens when we exercise, I talk about this whether we're talking about cognition or not, is we produce something called Bdnf, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Way to think about this is it's just almost like an insulation to our nerve cells. So when we produce more of it, we have better insulation, which means a faster firing speed and better connectivity within the brain to make those nerve signals that we're sending out end up in the right place and help us move and function better through life. I talked about a little bit of decreased inflammation, but if you think about the brain as with Parkinson's disease in kind of a chronic state of inflammation, our body knows something's wrong. It's trying to fix it. Inflammatory responses come with that, and that makes for increased inflammation, which kind of bogs down the processing speed of our brain. Any way we can drive decreased inflammation is important, and exercises creates anti-inflammation. So it's an important way to control how much we have in our brain. Immune system function improves. Dopamine receptors are increased. So we have more receptors to uptake that dopamine that is sitting outside of ourselves, that the cells that we need in our brain. So long story short, there's a ton of good evidence to show that exercise is so crucial for brain health and for brain change when it comes to managing the symptoms of the disease. All this research put together has been shown to the symptoms of Parkinson's can be slowed with consistent exercise. Maybe I'll move forward. So why cognitive training with exercise? This is going to get into a little bit of the research. I hope it's not too heady. I don't think it will be. I'm not trying to overwhelm you with research. I just want to show that there's good resources to show that what we're talking about when it comes to cognition is valid and true, and we can make a difference when we train cognition and exercise. So this is a review, a systematic review that was done just looking at fear of falls and how that relates to quality of life. And I always say this as a physical therapist. I think after doing this as on my own for 5 years and 16 years as a therapist, many years working with Parkinson's disease and other neurologic issues, my role as a physical therapist is to keep you moving for as long as possible, and keep you on your feet for as long as possible. And many people, when they're first diagnosed, are moving around great, no real problems. And my goal is to keep them moving as long as possible in that independent state, because we know the longer you can walk and stay on your feet and transfer and get in and out of cars and walk to where you want to from point A to point B in your home or in the community, the higher your quality of life is going to be. And at the end of the day, when we think about how we want to live our life, our quality of life is probably the biggest determinant. I don't care how fast you walk. I don't care how well you can get up out of seats. If you judge your quality of life as high, then this disease is not having a big effect on you, and you feel independent and positive about your outlook. And so we want to support that. We know that falls, when they begin to creep in, can be highly detrimental to our quality of life. This systematic review just laid it out. When we have fear of falls, that's negatively associated with our quality of life. Falls and fear of falling. So I say falls as well as fear of falling because hesitancy and fear around falls limits our mobility. When we're scared we're going to fall, we don't want to stand up and walk around. So falls and fear of falls restrict activity. Falls and fear of falls restrict independence. Cognition and physical decline are associated with falls. So that fourth point is the biggest thing that came out of this systematic review, is that yes, all these things limit our mobility when we're scared of falling, but falls are actually a part because of physical decline and part because of cognitive decline. And Parkinson's or not, we just want to keep that quality of life up as high as possible. So we want to keep you on your feet as long as we can. Cognition has a role to play in that. Cognition and falls, what factors cause falls? This slide just goes through a entry that was in the Journal of Neuro Rehab and Neuro Repair. It was looking at the contribution of physical and cognitive impairments and fall risk with people with Parkinson's disease specifically. And it was looking at what are the factors that cause falls. They came up with 4 things in this research article. There's a few other things that play into it, but these 4 areas, I thought 2 of them really centered around cognition. Obviously, the 4th one is impaired cognition. The other bolded one is impaired orientation and visual spatial awareness. I don't think we always think about orientation and visual spatial awareness as cognitive problems, but the way people are able to orient themselves and move around in crowded environments takes a fair amount of cognition, spatial awareness, and targeted mobility. And so that is a big contributor to falls as well. Freezing a gait and impaired anticipatory and reactionary balance are also on this list. I don't know of all of you out there if anybody's dealing with freezing of gait or shuffling, but if you are, you know what I'm talking about. That feeling of hesitancy and unable to get the correct step length can lead to losses of balance. And then impaired anticipatory and reactionary balance are just big words. That means our balance is affected in two ways here. Our ability to react when we're knocked off balance, that's reactionary balance, to take that step. And then our ability to anticipate when something's going to knock us off balance and make a movement to guard against that. So that's anticipatory and reactionary balance, and those two areas are affected as well. The next article, very simply, I'm going to try to move through these fast. This was an article looking at cognitive training and freezing of gait. So looking at whether that freezing of gait also had a cognitive component, which we know it does. This study showed that when cognitive training was inserted along with exercise, patients did better and actually improved the amount of times they froze within a short walking test. So the cognitive training was not introduced with exercise. It was separate, but they did both exercise and cognitive training and showed that group had less freezing after the trial. So we can even improve freezing of gait and shuffling with cognitive training. And that's the coolest thing that I find about the cognitive side of Parkinson's disease rehab, is that we can improve movement, not just by practicing movement, but also by training the brain to make decisions faster and be able to work in a complex environment when we're distracted, which we'll all give examples of later. The next slide, cognitive associations with comprehensive gait and static balance measures in Parkinson's disease. So this one was done by a couple of people that are really cool. One of them, Val Kelly, she works at UW. I've gotten to the chance to go to her gait lab. She studies a lot of different aspects of movement with Parkinson's disease. And Faye Horak, the last name on there, she's kind of like the queen bee. I think she works at Oregon Health Sciences University and does a lot of research on falls, why people fall, what's the problem with balance in Parkinson's, what's contributing to it, and how do we fix it. So good article that just shows a few different things. It shows gait, not only balance, but also gait and our ability to walk are impaired or have a component of cognition associated with them. So our ability to pace ourselves when we're walking, to speed up, to slow down, and also to turn are strongly associated with our ability to maintain attention and executive function. So our ability to make decisions, use our frontal cortex to take what's coming in and then make decisions based on that. It's our executive function. And those two areas are correlated with our ability to change pace and turn smoothly. Two areas that people with Parkinson's have significant difficulty with. And then when it comes to balance, our ability to sway and move from side to side, weight shift. If any of you out there do our daily dose or worked with me in the clinic, all I talk about is weight shifting. It's like my number one thing when it comes to movement, being able to move our weight from one leg to the other. That's impaired with people that have poor balance, as well as, and it's associated with our ability to maintain our attention again, and our ability to orient ourselves and use visual spatial awareness. So our understanding of what we have around us and our ability to not get distracted. Now, how many of you out there have a loved one who may say you get a little bit distracted sometimes, or you're having trouble maintaining your thoughts as we're walking together, as we're out in the community and we're moving through the world? Sometimes you lose train of thought, or you slow down, your speed changes or your movement changes when you're distracted. That's that attention coming in. And I see a lot of examples of that in the clinic day in and day out. I have problems with it too. My wife would tell me as well. So it's, it's something we're all working on, but it's highly associated with balance and walking. So when we think about slow walking speed and things like that, and bradykinesia that come in with Parkinson's disease, it's not just the mobility that we need to work on. We also need to change something about cognition or challenge our cognition. There are relationships between gait or balance. I thought this was a great quote with cognitive functions suggest there's shared cortical circuitry for mobility and cognitive functions. So there must be some cortical connection between attention, executive function, and mobility. And we have to respect those things and understand those things and train both those areas. I always explain the reason, when we're in the clinic and we're talking to folks, especially new patients, and giving them cognitive drills and they're getting frustrated and say, why the heck do I have to do this? Blah, 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 blah. It's confusing why we're having them step and giving directions that don't really make sense when you first start. So the way I try to explain cognitive training with exercise to people is that the world is a complex environment. We're constantly distracted. We're constantly having to make complex decisions on how much farther we need to step until we get to the door, how many steps it takes to get through the door, how to read signals that might be conflicting out in the real world, like a walk sign or a walk signal when you see cars that don't seem to be stopping as you're about to walk out into the intersection. That's all conflicting and confusing. We need to train that with movement in the real world so that we're able to process it at a faster pace. This was a systematic review of 7 randomized control trials, so really good studies looking at exercise and cognitive training in patients with mild cognitive impairment. Now, this wasn't Parkinson's specifically, but many people with Parkinson's deal with mild cognitive impairment over time. Doesn't necessarily happen to everyone, but there usually is a cognitive component that creeps in over time. And it showed that when they combined exercise and cognitive training, they saw an improvement in gait speed, which relates to increased processing speed, increased cognitive function, and improved balance. So if we can improve all these things by adding the two of them together, why don't we? And most of these studies were looking at cognitive training that involved multiple different areas. So it was hard, it was multiple different studies. It was hard to say these 3 exercises were performed in each one, but most of them worked with short-term memory, executive functioning. They all had a component of set shifting, which I'll talk about in a bit, inhibition training, which I'll talk about in a bit, and visual spatial training, which we'll show examples of, and hopefully you'll have a better idea of how that works. This is just a couple lines from another article that I thought were kind of nice and relevant. Executive function is a high-level subcomponent of cognition that regulates processes including working memory, inhibition, and cognitive flexibility. So I'll explain later, but working memory is our ability to take information in and then make sense out of it as it relates to the world around us or the bigger picture. You can think about it as sequencing. I know I have to, in order to get from point A to point B, in order to get to the bathroom, I have to walk out of the door, take a right, walk down the hall, take a left, and then I have a code that I have to remember. And I've got to keep those all in my mind. Or my wife told me to go to the grocery store and get celery, onions, and potatoes for dinner tonight. And I've got to keep that working memory as I'm moving through space. It also deals with executive function, also deals with our ability to inhibit. Well, we have to be able to slow things down, stop our processes at some point for safety, and that's called inhibition. I have many clients, or you might be somebody that describes this kind of feeling of the cart before the horse. You're walking and you just can't stop. You get into a pace, maybe even with language, you get into a pace and you're just talking so fast and there's not enough pronunciation, you're not slowing down your pace and everything becomes jarbled. As footsteps become destination and we can't separate one from the other. We can't sequence one weight shift to the other side. That's all examples of difficulties with inhibition. And then cognitive flexibility, being able to adapt on the fly, are all examples of executive functioning, and they're important in adapting efficiently to the world around us. So we need these abilities with our cognition to adapt and move smoothly through a crowded cocktail party or a APDA gala, when we're trying to find our seat, when we're walking out into the street, like an example I gave before about walkway signs and that confusion that can come from it. So in older adults, the last line, in older adults with mild cognitive impairment, not Parkinson's, but again, mild cognitive impairment, cognitive training has resulted in beneficial effects on cognitive functions such as attention has improved, orientation has improved, perception, language, memory. I know Sarah works a lot on cognition in her voice training sessions as well, and executive function. So just re-emphasizing, we need to work on this, and we need to come up with concrete examples of how we can use it throughout our workouts. So why cognitive training with exercise? We know through the research, this is just kind of going back through everything I've talked about already, it can improve freezing of gait. So if you're somebody that's shuffling and freezing, we need to work on big steps, but we also need to work on cognition with that. And if you're not with a physical therapist who's helping you with that, we need to try to find one who's close by, and hopefully can give you some example or some ways to find good physical therapists that are trained in Parkinson's disease. It decreases risk for falls. It improves processing speed so that we can move faster and react faster. It improves balance. It improves our ability to prioritize, to create a hierarchy. I have to keep stepping here. I can't pay attention to what this person's talking right now because I am having trouble with my steps and I need to make it to that door safely. We need to prioritize tasks in real life. I don't need to pay attention to those leaves anymore. I need to pay attention to the dog that's running out in front of me, and I have to stop myself before I keep walking into it and before I trip and fall. Those are examples of prioritizing the task, and we use those in exercise all the time. And then visual spatial improvements. I remember one of my favorite patients, when I first got started, he said he first knew he had Parkinson's because he had trouble backing into parallel parking spots or backing into any parking spots for that matter. And it was because of his visual spatial awareness. He was able to carry it. He looked good walking right into the clinic. You never would have known he had Parkinson's. But once he gave me those examples, we started to pick on visual spatial awareness, and it was really, really difficult for him. However, with training, he did get better. Okay, so how do we train cognition and exercise at the same time? It's a simple phrase called cognitive dual tasking. I have to write it down in almost every PT note that I do. It's all about giving you two things at once, having to manage two processes at the same time. And we can do that with physical tasks. We can also do that with a physical task and a cognitive task. So, and the reason we do these is real life requires that. I've given you already a few examples that I think make a lot of sense. Remembering a telephone number after somebody gives it to you and you're walking through a crowded area to get back to your, wherever you are, and write it down. That's a working memory, but you have to keep that going while taking big steps. The same thing with remembering a grocery list, or remember a couple people's names as you're walking up to them to meet them for the first time in 2 years because you've been, sequestered during the pandemic. Those are things that go on in our mind while we have to move through our environment gracefully and effectively and independently. Freezing and falls are associated with lower cognitive scores, so we need to train cognition. Practicing cognition and mobility at the same time is real life. It really is. If you've ever walked with your loved one and had a conversation with them, you're cognitively dual tasking. So I want to give you a few examples of how to do that. I've named these a few times already, but set shifting is a complex task. It's like rubbing your head and patting your belly. It's that area where we walk the doctor's office. We're going down, we take off out of the elevators. We know we're going down the hallway and to the right. And all of a sudden we already have our motor cortex planning that out. And we get right to that turn and we see, oh, there's a sign that's saying, no, never mind, under construction, it's back this way. Being able to change and adapt on the fly is set shifting. A lot of the ways we do that in the clinic is by a simple example of these dots up on the upper right corner. They're numbered dots. We can use them in all kinds of different ways. We can lay them down on the ground. I'll show you an example in a little bit. But we can have people name off color, then number based on where they're stepping, or alternating between color and number, or we can use things like stepping to the right. When I call off right, you have to step the opposite direction that I say. Or boxing, you're going to punch right jab, but every time I want you to use the opposite hand to throw that punch. That's set shifting. A good example is a Stroop's test, which I'll go through, I think, on the next slide. We can all do it together. It'll be a ton of fun. Short-term memory, obviously trying to give people things to remember throughout an exercise and then come back to those and see if they can remember them. So maybe it's a group of objects, a group of names they have to kind of keep in their memory and then recall that later on. Inhibition, like I've talked about before, it's being able to stop your motor plan before you get too far. So I'm relating cognition to movement and its ability to hold back in the moment to keep yourself safe. You're getting ready to throw a punch, but all of a sudden you realize somebody's walking in front of you and you don't want to hit them. You have to hold back. So there's ways that we work on it in therapy, and we'll go through those. Sequencing, another area that we work on and that you can hopefully will find ways to implement into your exercise. That's that working memory, being able to remember, I need to lunge to the side, squat down, come up, raise my hands high, and then move to the other side. A lot of our exercises that we do here and on our online training are focused tons of sequencing to keep that rhythm going. Almost like dancing is another great idea of how we use working memory to create a whole movement or a whole dance. We have to put multiple pieces together. Visual spatial awareness is another area that we also need to work on. So this grid, I hope you guys can all see it and read it over on the right. I'm going to get up now. You guys get to move with me. I'm going to turn this around. You feel free. Our clinic is under some construction behind us. So we're about to take down this wall behind me and expand. So I'm excited, but it's bare. Let's see. I have to get far enough away from you, but I still have to be able to see the screen. Hope you guys can hear me. This is an example of set shifting. So we're going to go from the top to the bottom. I don't want you to pay any attention to the column, the colors in the column on the left where it says right and left. Don't worry about the colors in the background there. The only colors I want you to pay attention to are on the right side. We won't use them for the first time through. The first time through, we're just going to say the line, right forward. If you all want to stand up, that'd be great. We're going to say right forward and step with our right foot forward. Easy enough. We always come back to the center. The next line says left back. That's our left foot stepping back. We come back to center. Now be careful here. Hold on to something if you need it. Be safe. Our next line is left forward. We're going to keep going. Everybody say it with me. Right side. That's right. I can hear you coming through the screen. Our next one, left forward. Next line, right side. Next line, right back. Next line, left back. Next line, left side. Okay, you guys did great. Now we're going to set shift a little bit. So as we go all the way down this, we're going to say what's written, but we're going to step with the opposite foot. So now we're all going to say right forward, but our left foot will be stepping forward. Okay, the next line, we're all going to say left back, but we're going to step with our right foot. So let's see if we can do it. We're going to start at the top. You're going to say it straight out. Right forward, opposite foot stepping. Left back, opposite foot. Left forward. Right side. Left forward. Right side. Right back. You're almost there. Left back. Left side. So a little bit confusing, right? You're saying something, your brain says, you hear right, you want to move right, you have to think on the fly, adapt on the fly, remember the rules, and go the opposite way. It's counterintuitive. The last time through this now, we're not going to say, we're going to step with the correct foot, or the foot that's written, and we're going to step in the direction that's written. But this time, instead of saying the direction, forward, back, or side, you're going to say the color in that box. So for instance, the first line would be right green. The next line would be left pink. The next line, left red. Right blue. You see what I'm doing there? So your mind wants to read the words because we're, humans, and we see words and we want to read them. So you have to adapt, remember the rules, and still step, right? And still move. I'm confusing you while you're moving, and that happens throughout our entire life. But we know when we're distracted, falls creep in. Losses of balance creep in. Decreased movement, slowness of walking creeps in. So we train this, and we give people exercises that make them move big and make their mind work. So that's an example of set shifting. I'm going to give you a couple videos here. I hope they work. Jen, yell at me if they don't. These are from my Instagram page, so sorry if there's some comments on the side, but I think they give good examples of what we're trying to do. This is a dot drill. I have dots laid out. I'm going to call off a color and the hand. Right. Green, left. Orange, right. Good job. Yellow, right. Yellow, right. Blue, left. Blue, left. So I'm giving him a hand and a dot, and I can say either the color or the number. So he has to be able to process what number or color I'm asking him to step to. He has to step with size. And because I've given him those rings, so he has to step far enough out, bigger than he probably normally would. And then he has to raise the hand that I give him. So there's all this information coming in, working memory, set shifting, that he has to process and still step effectively. What did I do? This is where I always have trouble. Let me get back to my thing here. There we go. All right. This is another idea of cognitive training with exercise. So this is kind of an adult hopscotch, I've called it. I have dots laid down on the agility ladder. And this gentleman is jumping through the agility ladder, hopefully getting his heart rate up, making it intensive. And he has to call out the color or the number of the dot in each square, and then either jump with his feet outside of the square if there's a dot in it, or his feet in the square if the dot's not there. So he has to think and adapt on the fly, right? Just like I gave you the example of the dog walking out in front of you, you've got to move around it. So he's got to move around these dots.
Go ahead. Blue, 2, 36. Purple. Oops. Yellow, 25.
So not everybody needs to be able to do hopscotch, but it's a great example of having to adapt on the fly. JJ does boxing, rock steady boxing. Great way to make people adapt on the fly. You give them hands, you're able to adapt the punches in real time, and you can do different things. So any of you that are doing rock steady boxing or have ever done boxing before probably understand the sequencing involved, and then also having to, if you're working with somebody with mitts or something like that, they can really throw you off in real time and you have to adapt to it. It's a great way to challenge your cognition at the same time. This is another example of using arrows in the same way. We use these arrows all the time. These dots and arrows you can buy on Amazon really cheap, and use those colors and directions to throw you off while you're exercising. So this is just a video where the patient has to jump in the direction of the arrow. One foot goes out on the box where the arrow is pointing to. So if the box is pointing to the left, he has to jump and put his left foot out. If the arrow is pointing to the right, he has to jump and put his right foot out, and then call off the color. So multiple processes going on at the same time. Let's see, one or two more here. I don't mean to bore you with these videos, but they give you good ideas of how you can use exercise and cognition at the same time. This is a simple treadmill walking. We have arrows set up. They're either red or blue. If it's blue, he needs to point in the direction that the arrow is pointing. If it's red, he needs to point in the opposite direction. So he has to point the opposite direction when it's a red arrow, the same direction when it's a right arrow. And that's a good example, again, of set shifting, but also just straight, whoa, sorry, let me get back. Just straight distraction, right? We're just distracted and we have to process in real time and still keep those feet going on the treadmill. I'm going to give, let's see, I'm going to give a couple more examples here of inhibition. Carry over when obviously when we're inhibiting movement, the idea like I gave of, you know, you're walking across the street, you get your walk sign, you're thinking you want to go, and you need to be able to hold back in that moment. And all too often what we'll see is a shuffling gait pattern. So there's different ways to improve that. Goes and no-goes are great examples. So we'll do a boxing drill. It's really not a boxing drill. It's just a reaching drill, but we'll throw some punches and have some fun with it. If you guys want to join me, that'd be great. I'm going to give my hands numbers, and I'd love for you guys to follow with those numbers. We can do it from sitting. You don't even have to stand up. But we're going to say this hand is 1. This hand is 2. I'm going to punch the screen. Okay, so everybody, 1 and 2. So if I call off a hand, 1, throw the punch, 2. Throw the punch, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2. Okay, easy enough. Now you have to wait for my go, all right? If I say no, we don't do anything. 1. Hopefully if somebody punched there. I can't see you, but usually somebody punches. All right, ready? 1, go. 1, go. 2, go. 2, go. 2, go. 2, go. 1, no. 1, go. 1, no. Oh, did you throw the punch because you saw me? Or were you listening to my voice? That's the other great thing that we can play around with. You see visual cues all the time. You have to learn how to adjust to them and change your body and hold back. So that's inhibition training. I'm trying to make you want to chomp at the bit, but you have to hold back, right? And that's where a lot of people get in trouble. I've had one gentleman in particular had a really bad accident where he fell. He was hiking for 5 miles and he got to the end of the trail and he could not stop stepping, and he was going downhill and he just got faster and faster and faster and he could not put on the brakes. Ended up having a wipeout. So this kind of thing can happen. And it's all processing impairment that deals with inhibition and slowing it down. So goes and no-goes are a great way to do that. Auditory cues and processing in real time. Let's see what this video is. I haven't seen them in a while. So hopefully this is just another example. Oh, whoa, kicked me out. Maybe no more videos. You guys might be happy about that. So I've talked about all these different kind of special words for cognitive training, but really it comes down to how do you take them and apply them to real life? And so I've given this slide, I think is hopefully valuable. I've given some ideas of how you could do this if you're not going to a class, or you're not seeing a physical therapist that could challenge you with these, or you're not doing videos that really have any cognitive drills, or you're searching for how to implement this in your real life. Just simple distraction techniques. If you're on a walk, you're trying to keep the pace that you normally keep, or if you know what your time is for your normal walk, you try to keep that same time while you're doing different lists. You could do alphabetical lists. You could name off cities around the world that start with alphabetical A, B, C, D. You could go through types of trees, spices, clothing, boys and girls names, sports, sport that starts with A, sport that starts with B, Olympic sports. That's a fun one when the Olympics are on. Cities, states. You could do anything with alphabetical organization, and it's keeping your mind working and distracting you while you're having to move and focus on your walks and get intensive exercises in. This is another one you could do on a bike if you bike at home, or if you do any other type of cardio equipment. Another great way to keep your mind working. Alphabetical orders, an alphabetical list, but then alphabet backwards, using things backwards, months backwards, days backwards, spelling backwards. Another hard one is using sentences backwards. Like, say, for instance, I said, this is a great webinar. Say that sentence backwards. Webinar, great, A is this. I think that's right. But you get the gist. And if you're doing that while you're on a cardio machine, it can become very complex, and you've got to set the goal of trying to keep the same rate, speed, whether you're walking, whatever it is, you want to keep the same rate going so you're still working out intensively while your mind's humming along. It's difficult. Exercises with multiple steps and sequencing involved. I brought up the idea of dance. I know, boxing obviously has sequencing in it with combination punches. We try to make those, if you've ever done, big or power moves, they have a lot of sequences involved with them. We incorporate a lot of those same types into our online training or in our therapy clinics. So anything where you're sequencing and following multiple steps, dance for Parkinson's, I don't know if I said that, Zumba, there's a lot of sequencing involved. Tai Chi can have a ton of sequencing involved. Short-term memory games. I tell people at home, lay out the plan for your day while you're walking with your loved one, and have them lay out everything you're going to do that day. And then see if you can recall that while you're walking along. Maybe you give yourself 5 minutes, and then you see if you can recall all those activities that you have for the day. I have people, going back to these lists, I'll have people go between, name off vegetables, name off fruits, name off meats and cheeses, whatever it is, in alphabetical order. There's a never ending litany. We had a guy today who loves board games. He was naming off board games in alphabetical order as we were doing exercises. So those are always fun. Visual spatial training, there's an app called the Clock Yourself app. I think it's free, or maybe $1 to download. An occupational therapist made it up, and it literally is just a clock. They use a clock face, and it's a stepping task where it'll give you random numbers to step to. So the hour hands are, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way around to 12, are oriented underneath your feet on this app, and then it asks you to step to them, and also dual tasks. So maybe it'll have you doing a step and a bicep curl, or maybe a step and an overhead raise. And you have to keep these things going while your mind's working. It's a really nice app. We use it in here quite a bit. Something to check out that's pretty cheap and easy, that would give you an idea of visual spatial training. I also think Tai Chi is a great way to use visual spatial training and shifting that center of gravity and center of weight side to side to not only challenge your mind, but also your balance. Trail making, another great cognitive task. This would be, for example, we'll do it together real quick. We're going to punch with let's say we punch with our one hand, and I want you to name the first letter in the alphabet, which is A. Our two hand is going to name numbers. So every time we punch with the two hand, we have to name a number. Let's go with A, 1, B, 2, C, 3, D, 4, and then see if you can get all the way through the alphabet. It gets harder as you go along. That's why I didn't keep going. I probably would have screwed something up, but that's a trail making task. You could do the same thing with vegetables and fruits. Let's say broccoli and grapes, cauliflower and apples. So you have to go back and forth between the two categories, and you're constantly shifting in your mind. It's fun, right? Playing cards can also be used for this at home. If you want that set shifting and you want to be adapting on the fly, you could do two movements. Maybe it's a squat and a forward lunge. right? Let's get our heart rate up. We've got squats and forward lunges. You or a loved one could have a deck of cards. You could make up rules. If it's a red card, I'm going to do a squat. If it's a black card, I'm going to do a lunge. If it's a face card, I'm going to do neither, and maybe that's a push-up, or maybe it's a high knee, or maybe it's a lateral lunge. Okay, so you have to adapt to what's thrown out there, and maybe jokers and aces are something altogether different. So you're just flipping these cards, and you don't know what's coming, but you have to adapt on the fly. I've had a lot of loved ones that will join in on that with their spouse, and or the person dealing with the disease, and it can be a lot of fun to train together. Another fun way to do that is directional stepping. This is one I really like. Sorry, I know we're almost out of time. I'll run through this one with you too, because it's fun. So directional stepping, I use this one in our class warm-ups a lot, and also on our online warm-ups a lot, because it just kind of gets your whole body going and makes you think. So I can say in, out, which in would be a step forward, out would be a step back. I can say right or left. Right would be a step to the side, left would be a step to the side. I can also say up or down. If it's down, we're going to squat. If it's up, we're going to reach up. Okay, so I can start off, and I want you to say whatever I say. When repeat what I say and move in that direction. So in, you guys would all say in and step in. Out, you guys would all step out as you say out. Right, right, left, left. Okay, pretty simple. Now, I want you to move the opposite direction of what I say, but say the word. Repeat the word that I say. Repeat the word, but move the opposite direction. Okay, this is like a rub your head, pat your head, rub your head, pat your belly. Okay. Move the direction, move the opposite direction, say what I say. So if I say in, you should all be saying in as you move back. If I say up, you should all be saying up as you move down. If I say down, you're all going to say down, but move up. Out, out. Left, left. In, up, up. Right, right. You see, there's this confusion. There's this kind of confusion in your mind that happens, and you still have to move through it. It's all about being able to move while distracted. You may not always get it right, but you got to stay on your feet while you do it. Okay. I hope I gave you some good examples there, because that was really important to me. Ways to get them in classes. Boxing, dance, Zumba, Tai Chi, all great ways of doing cognitive training with your exercise that hopefully get your heart pumping. I know we try to add a lot of those in on our online platform, and as we get classes going again here. Great ways to do that. I've already shown you and talked to you about our clinics. So these slides are really not helpful, but if you're in the Seattle or Bellevue area, please come. If you haven't been with a physical therapist before, this is where we specialize. We really want to help you. Please let us know. I'm sure Jen and Jean and Kirsten are going to share our information. We're here to help. We take insurance. We want you to feel like if you're having troubles, you have somewhere to go to. If you're having trouble and you don't live in the Seattle area, feel free to write me, and I can always give you information on how you can find a directory of trained therapists or trainers in your area to help you along as well. And if you don't have anything close to you, we do Daily Dose PD online. It's just dailydosepd.com is the website. You can sign up for a 30-day free trial. You can use all our videos and hopefully see how we work some of this cognition into our training in those classes. That's just a blurb on that. My phone number is here. I'll share my information with you too. Our phone number, that's 304. That is 304. Everybody thinks that's a West Virginia number. It was a free number when I first got started, and now it's kind of stuck. So if you're dialing 304, you're dialing the Parkinson's Fitness Project, and Nate at the Parkinson'sFitnessProject.com. And it's 12:01, and I'm able to stick around for questions, even though I know I went a little long, Jen.
Okay, well, that's the beauty of Zoom. People can just log off when they need to go. So, but we won't keep you too much longer, but we do have some questions. Thank you, Nate. Your examples always challenge me, and I am not somebody living with Parkinson's, but I keep trying to do it as well. So we just got to keep linking that. So
Yep.
I was punching when you said not to punch. So
Good. Hey, you've listened to this many times, so
I have. I'm getting better at it the more that I do it,
Good.
though. So that's part of it. So there are some questions. One of them was, where do we get, how do we get access to your classes? I will be sending out a post-event email. I will link you to the Daily Dose. I will send Nate slides, give you some information there. Also, just sneak peek into the next edition of our Parkinson's Pathfinder. Nate's colleague Kelsey also addressed this subject, and so in there are some examples of some of the things that Nate did as well. So I think you're reading some of the questions in the chat. Do you want me to pose these, or do you want to answer some of them? How would you like to move about this, Nate?
I'll answer some of them that I see. There's one from PF Herber, adding these cognitive exercises. Is there any research into or insight suggesting either duration, intensity, or frequency? That's a good question, and it is not. There are all the research out there. I think that's what I meant when I said it's still kind of on the cusp, because there have not been any that I know of, any significant suggestions for the duration and how much you need to implement to see real change. That's the hard part, because although many of these research studies showed improvements, they were all done at varying different lengths: 12 weeks, 2 times a week, 3 times a week for 6 weeks, 4 times a week for 4 weeks, 1 time a week for a year. So there's no real consensus on exactly how much is needed, but we have been able to see that some of these effects can last for up to 3 to 6 months after the trial is completed. So this stuff does stick with you. However, there is a wearing off effect, obviously, over time. I can also look, how do we get a page of OG dual tasking?
Probably that cognitive dual tasking page.
Yeah, I can send these slides again. I think that second to last slide, I was really trying to give you as many kind of home examples as possible, because this cognitive training is really hard to do by yourself. That's always the hard thing that I've learned is I know it's good. It's so exciting when we do it in the clinic. Then how do I do this at home? Trying to come up with those kind of creative ways to challenge your mind. I think it comes down to if you have a close by class, like I mentioned, those are great. Speech therapists can give tons of cognitive drills. I know Sarah's done a few really tough cognitive twisters in her videos with us. And then getting in with a PT to kind of work through your specific situation to give you examples that you might be able to use at home is really helpful. But I'm more than happy to give you these slides, and you can use that last slide especially to come up with some ideas, or just reach out to me and maybe I can try to help you along.
Yeah, and I'll put a link to when you send me the slides, I'll put a link to that for folks who are signed up for this program. So I'll send that out.
And then Barbara had any special advice for avoiding falls in crowds, like at a concert or sporting? Don't go crowd surfing, Barbara. That's number one. Don't jump off the stage. That'll probably, this comes back to, there is so much stimulation at a concert or sporting event like that. And I can't tell you, how many, well, I can, but I've had quite a few patients that have had big tumbles at those large events because there's so much to look at, right? So you really have to go in, I think, going in with the right approach of knowing, hey, this isn't going to be like me walking around my house. I am going to likely have to really think about what I'm doing when I'm navigating, and knowing that I'm not always in control of my balance, because somebody could jet out in front of me, somebody could knock me off balance. And being prepared for that is really important and sets you up with the right mindset going into the event, that you're going to be distracted and you have to kind of be a little bit more alert when you're traveling to and from your seat or whatever it may be, because there's so many unknowns when it comes to multiple people in a crowd. And that's where a lot of people have falls. And then I don't know the answer about Eliquis or blood thinners from the anonymous attendee.
Okay.
And yeah, I can put up somebody ask, will tasks so important in speech? Yes, Sarah, how do we access our classes online? I'll just put up a couple of resources here. This is.
And Nate, you can send me those resources and I can put them in the post-event email if that's easier.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, and I do want to mention that Nate and the Daily Dose is partnering with APDA, and his Monday afternoon class at noon, is it noon? You can register that through APDA, and you can take that class on a weekly basis. So trying out his 30-minute class or his 30-day free thing gets you all those classes, and you can also participate in that Monday class for free with APDA. So yeah, thank you for doing that.
The class has been fun. There's quite a few people come in there, so it's fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I like it. Good vibes.
All right. Well, any parting words for our audience on this topic or this subject or anything?
Always feel free to reach out and email or call, and even if you're in a different city, state, country, we'll try to give you as many resources as we know of close by you, because I know sometimes it's really hard finding those people that know what they're talking about and can help you out.
And also APDA has a really close relationship with the rehab center at Boston University, and there is a hotline that you can dial and speak to a therapist, and they'll also give you referrals and ideas. So I will put that in the post-event email as well, because that's a service that APDA provides through Boston University. Yeah, so that's a good one. So you should expect this to be up on YouTube next week, let's say. And I will send a post-event email with the slides and the link to that and a couple other resources for those of you that are on here. I think that's it from me and it from Nate. Stay tuned to the news you can use for further information about programs coming up in 2022. Our last program in 2021 is actually a program for newly diagnosed, which also Nate is speaking at in December, called Good Start. So that program is up on our virtual event calendar, and it's a 4-part educational program for people who've been diagnosed with Parkinson's 5 years or less. So it really gives a lot of really great information about what the heck is Parkinson's, why is exercise so important, which is what Nate is speaking on. We're going to have a nutritionist on there, so it should be a good program, the 4-part series. So thank you so much, Nate, for doing this. We really appreciate it.